Welcome to Preservation Oaks, the podcast where we invite you to step away from the bustle of everyday life, settle in and relax, and take a moment to leave the familiar behind as we explore the hidden gems of America that preserve our cultural past. We call them our Preservation Oaks, and with each episode, we'll journey to a different corner of the country, where we'll discover the unique histories, landscapes, and communities that make up our nation. We'll visit with local museums, historical, and genealogical societies. They are the stewards of these stories. They preserve the legacy of each place like precious pieces of fabric in a quilt that binds the freedom-loving, hard-working people in this country together. So, slow down, grab a beverage, open your mind, and let us take you on a tour of the fascinating histories and heartfelt traditions that lie just beyond the horizon. This is Preservation Oaks, where every story is a stitch in the fabric of our shared culture. Now, join our host, Sean Radcliff, as he uncovers another thread in the tapestry of America's heritage and what it takes to preserve it.
Well, welcome back to Preservation Oaks. I'm your host, Sean Radcliff, and this is episode 114, Part 2. Today, we continue our in-depth conversation with Travis Boley, Association Manager of the Oregon-California Trails Association. In Part 1, we explored the immense human scale of the Oregon and California Trails, one of the largest voluntary migrations in human history, and why these landscapes matter, not just as routes on a map, but as places where real lives were lived, lost, and forever changed. In this second part, we turn our focus more fully toward preservation, how these historic corridors are protected today, the challenges they face, and the vital role the Oregon-California Trails Association plays in ensuring these stories are not erased by time, development, or neglect. This is where history meets stewardship, and where the past becomes a shared responsibility. If you're just joining us, I recommend listening to Part 1 first for historical context. But either way, you're about to hear why this work matters deeply, and why it continues to resonate today. So let's return to our conversation with Travis Boley and continue exploring the legacy of the Oregon and California Trails. By the way, if you have questions or comments about today's episode, you can reach us at preservationoaks@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Please follow, like, comment, or subscribe to Preservation Oaks wherever you get your podcasts: Spotify, Apple, Podbean, YouTube, Rumble, and more. Your support truly helps bring history to life. On our next episode of Preservation Oaks, we take a journey into the forgotten corners of attics, basements, closets, and barns, places where history often hides in plain sight. From Civil War diaries to World War II love letters, Underground Railroad documents, and family Bibles with hidden records, we explore real discoveries that transformed family stories and deepened our understanding of the past. Learn what to look for in your own home, how to preserve and interpret your finds, and why these seemingly small objects hold the power to reconnect families and communities across generations. Tune in and discover how the next great piece of history might be waiting in your attic. All right, this is Preservation Oaks Podcast, episode 114, Part 2, where we learn about the Oregon-California Trails Association with our guest, Travis Boley. So, Travis, thank you so much for being here for Part 2. Thank you so much for doing this work and meeting with us and making sure that people understand the rich history. I think it's really important that we have a Part 2, and I thank you for joining us once again to talk about the Oregon-California Trails Association, located in Independence, Missouri. So this is Part 2. We're going to pick it up where we left off. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you again. I really appreciate the opportunity to have an elongated session to fully discuss this history.
There's a lot of, well, I would assume that as people are out discovering these portions of the trail and And collectors, like the people that donated the diaries, they're discovering things all the time, and hopefully they're donating them to your organization. Can you describe a few key artifacts or records that have been donated and how they contribute to the richness of your collection?
Well, I'll tell a story of a recent discovery. There was a pretty famous mountain man by the name of James Kleiman, and Kleiman was heading east over Donner Pass, and he mentioned that he lost his flintlock. That's the firing mechanism in your gun. And he said about approximately where it was lost. And about a year ago, some of our volunteers were out in the Forest Service volunteering and mapping and marking. And one of the things that was discovered was a flintlock, about where James Kleiman lost his. So we have not 100% with certainty said that is James Kleiman's flintlock, but we're pretty sure that it is. I believe it's now at the Donner Museum up in Donner Pass. And then there was another group called the Forlorn Hope. There's a guy named Bob Crowley, who's an OCTA member. He's an investment guy from California. He's also an ultra marathoner, and him and some of his friends decided to recreate the Forlorn Hope. So the Forlorn Hope were a group of people in the Donner Party who tried to go for help. They tried to get rescued, and they wander around the Sierra in the dead of winter. And so these ultra marathoners went up and recreated that. And as they were doing that, there is a story that, again, of a lost axe head. And as they were making their way down the mountain, they came upon an axe head that looked like it was in about the right place, and probably the right axe head. Again, there's no absolute certainty. In that case, they left it where they found it. I will implore your listeners, please do not try to go there. First of all, it's illegal to collect artifacts on public lands, but most importantly, it is a very dangerous part of the Sierra. It's very remote. It's in a canyon. I don't want anybody to get hurt when they're out treasure hunting. I'm satisfied to know that it's back in the ground where it belongs, but it's stories like that, these things that can still be found, things that we're still learning, things that we're still discovering, things that are in people's private collections. I had a friend years ago. He was a banker. His name was Joe Houts. And when he retired, his grandmother, when she perished, she had a trunk in her attic. And as he was going through it, he discovered a muster roll for Quantrill's Raiders. And if no one knows, Quantrill's Raiders was this group of Confederate guerrillas who raided into Kansas. They're most famous for burning Lawrence, Kansas to the ground in 1863. And it was mostly a bunch of guys, young guys from western Missouri. But he finds the muster roll in her trunk, and he also finds the battle flag that Quantrill's men carried. So he took it upon himself to research each and every one of these men, and he published a book called Quantrill's Thieves. The first half of the book is a narrative about Quantrill and his operations in Missouri and Kansas, and the second half of the book is anywhere from 1 to 4 page biographies of each and every one of these men. And that's the kind of treasures that we are absolutely certain still exist in people's attics, people's personal collections. I've heard of tales of letters between Lewis and Clark that are in a private collection that have never seen the light of day and would love to see those someday. They're just in a private family collection. Would love to see what more we could learn about Lewis and Clark. You never know. My wife often volunteers and comes in, and she used to work in a library in a high school, so she's got some library skills. And one of our YouTube videos that we recently filmed, me and my assistant were just reading excerpts. So she had gone through and found some of what I would call funny excerpts or sad excerpts. And we didn't read any of them ahead of time. She just highlighted copies of them and gave them to us. And so we read them aloud in front of the camera and reacted to them in real time. Probably one of the funnier stories was one of the guys on the trail had never seen a skunk before and attempted to capture said skunk and learned a very hard lesson, which is pretty humorous. But there are also some sad ones of death on the trail that we read as well. But that's the kind of stories, when I'm in a cemetery, I look at every single tombstone as, that's a full story right there. And these diaries are often a full story. And it's nothing you can learn from a textbook. Years ago, we partnered with the Independent School District to create curriculum for 8th graders where we really took them out of the textbook. By then, we had about 400 diaries on our website. So the school district decided that all 1,000 of their 8th graders were going to download a diary, and that was going to be their textbook for the semester. They were basically that immigrant. They were that person, and they had to report every day in class on what that person did that day as they went through the diary. And it was, it was unvarnished. It wasn't whitewashed. It was death. It was birth. It was real life. And there was no attempt to edit anything. These kids were reading primary source documents, which, I mean, you can read anybody's interpretation, but I assure you that your personal biases are going to creep into how you interpret that. And assuredly, the people that are writing this stuff down have their own biases as well. But the best way, I think, to learn history is to read it from a primary source document and to certainly visit the site, because you can never fully, truly appreciate the geography of what these people endured until you've stood in their footsteps.
Yeah, good point. You mentioned earlier that your association is digitizing what you have. How is your association handling the digitization of records and photographs to ensure they remain accessible in the future? What percentage is done versus not done?
Oh boy, the percentage done is minuscule. I mean, this is probably a never-ending job, if I'm being honest. There's just so many documents. But what we started with, I mentioned earlier, Merrill Mattis, one of the founders of OCTA, a long-term National Park Service historian. He was the originator of our library. Upon his death, he left all of his collections to us. So we started with his personal diary collection and digitized them. Unfortunately, for his purposes, he was really only interested in the trail up to about Fort Laramie. So you're not even really quite halfway through the trail. So most of those diaries peter out about Fort Laramie. This Don Buck collection that I mentioned that the California Nevada chapter has been digitizing and has on their website are complete diaries. The Hopper collection, the gentleman in San Diego that made his donation, have some complete diaries, some incomplete diaries. The Martin collection we got from a couple from Indiana that passed away recently. They have some full length diaries. So the way we handle digitization is on a as we can basis, and it's largely a matter of funding. We do write digitization grants. We have limited capacity both in terms of funding and volunteers. Hosting websites costs money. The digital copier costs money. The scanning bed, those things cost money. And so we have kind of mastered the art of getting small grants. It's that old axiom of how do you eat an elephant? Yep. One bite at a time. And that's how we've kind of been tackling this. So again, I mentioned earlier, we really need volunteers on that preservation front, on that mapping and marking front. We really need them in the library and archives as well. I do know our California Nevada chapter has anywhere of 20 to 25 people at a time working on the Don Buck collection. Here in Independence, we have 3 people working on all the other collections. We just have a lot more members on the West Coast than we do in the Midwest. Fully 50% of our membership lives in Oregon or California. We have a small percentage here in Missouri, so we don't have as many volunteers to tap into. So I assure you, if someone wants to get busy in OCTA, we've certainly got work for them, no matter what their interests are.
Fantastic. Now, you also have an online archaeology collection on your website, right?
We do. There was a woman named Mary Conrad. Mary was a retired librarian from Kansas City, Kansas, and she's also a member of the Kansas City Archaeological Society. And one day she literally showed up my office. I'm not even joking. She must have had a couple of wheelbarrows full of documents that she'd collected over time on archaeological digs on related trail sites. And she wanted to get that paper in the digital form and get it on our website. So we got a donation that enabled us to hire a professional website developer. And she worked with Mary hand in hand. And over the course of a year or so, we also acquired an intern. We got another grant and got an intern, a young lady that was finishing her degree at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. So the 3 of them basically took Mary's paper and created this really robust repository on our website. I don't know how many hundreds of sites are there. I haven't looked at it in a long time since it went up, but I do know that it's broken down state by state, county by county. Anybody can go and look and see what archaeological digs have been made on your piece of trail in your neighborhood and see firsthand what professional archaeologists discovered on an immigrant trail.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Now, could you outline the breadth of your collection, including its size and diversity of items?
Well, there's a guy named Mike Smith, who's the chairman of our Library and Archives Committee. Mike's a retired executive director of the Nebraska State Historical Society. When he retired, he moved to Overland Park, Kansas, which is a suburb of Kansas City, and he comes out every week and goes through it. And he could probably give you that answer. He's told me at one time, if I just had to eyeball it, I would say it probably covers something close to 4,000 square feet just here in the Independence location. I do not have a handle on how many books, maps, diaries, letters, reminiscences, artifacts, etc. are in that collection, but I assure you, it's well into the tens of thousands. It's a lot of stuff. We are in the process of expanding our collection catalog. It's a software called Past Perfect. People that work in museums will know that. We've used it primarily for a membership database, but we are also going to be using it for a collections database so that we can get a better handle on it. I know one of the things that Mike and his committee is really just trying to do for now is get a handle on what we have, create finding aids. We've had a number of interns over the years that have both done digitization and finding aids, but the work remains to be done because, as I mentioned in the last episode, the City of Independence, after COVID, didn't have library staff again for a while. And when they did bring staff back, they did not hire a curator or a library and archivist. So it's all volunteers working on these collections now. There are no professional staff involved at all. So we desperately need help in that area.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Can you describe your association's funding model and share any financial targets you hope to reach for 2026?
Well, as a public-private partnership, we do enter into cooperative agreements with federal agencies. So one of the cooperative agreements we have is with the U.S. Forest Service, which helps to reimburse volunteer expenses to bring them out to do some of this work. You know, it's not cheap to travel across counties or states to come, and you might need lodging, you might need a per diem for food, you definitely need gas money. And these types of agreements help us to be able to reimburse our volunteers' travel. We have a similar agreement with the National Park Service. I would say all told, those federal agreements make up roughly 26-27% of our total budget. The rest is all private. It's a mix of membership dollars, donations, sales, event registration fees, tour fees, things of that nature. It is a pretty broad mix. We also have an endowment. It has grown. I believe when I started, the endowment was about $650,000. Last I looked, it's about $3.2 million. And we're able to take the income from that. One of the things that we've done with that income in the last year is we've hired a full-time, what we call the Assistant National Preservation Officer. I mentioned earlier, our National Preservation Officer is a guy named John Winter. But about a year ago, we hired an assistant, a National Preservation Officer, a young lady named Jordan Thomas. Jordan's from Nevada. And she was working in a museum in Idaho when we found her. And she's been a great addition to the team, brings a lot of professional level knowledge to the position, and it is a paid position, and it's fully funded from the earnings of our endowment. We also have a digital media manager that we're hopeful our YouTube channel will grow enough to be able to cover the expense of having that person. So again, it's really important for your listeners to please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please follow and watch our YouTube channel. Share those videos. Share that love of history with others, because those annoying commercials you get when you watch YouTube, well, 40% of that, generally speaking, comes back to the creator. There are other earned income opportunities in there. We often advertise books or things related to what we're talking about in those particular videos. So we are a nonprofit. We are woefully understaffed and woefully underfunded. And we rely so much on volunteers and our donors and our members to just keep this wagon train moving west.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
What are some of the ways people can contribute through fundraising activities to help support your association's goals?
Well, again, it all comes back to really membership. Membership is the lifeblood of the organization, and not just joining the national organization. And you can join any other chapter, generally speaking, for around $10, sometimes $15. You'll also get a localized newsletter. You'll get invites to outings, events, speakers, tours. And that's really where you're going to learn. The neophyte, the person new to this history, the great thing about belonging to a chapter is you're going to be around people that have been doing this stuff, in some cases, for literally decades. They are the minutia lovers. They know every minute detail about the trail in their area you could ever imagine. And if we had the capability of downloading some of these people's brains into a computer, it would be a worthwhile endeavor. However, they can share that with other people. That way, that tradition of knowledge continues on. We do try, obviously, to record or write down much of it, but you know how it is. Not everything always comes out of your head that you know. So the more people that know this stuff, the better, because we don't want to get into a situation where one day all this knowledge is just lost because there's no one able to share it. So we need these new people to come in and learn. So membership would be the first way. Obviously, many of our members donate far and above what their membership fees are. We had a longtime member pass away a month or two ago. He was a member of our Idaho chapter, and he left us a $25,000 gift, and he's challenged others to match that. And I'm grateful to say that many people have stepped up to his challenge and have been sending in donations in his memory. That happens frequently. I mentioned earlier a guy named Bob Crowley who leads that Forlorn Hope expedition. He's an ultramarathoner and an investor. And he recently made a sizable donation as well to underwrite some of the activities of our California, Nevada chapter. So we see a lot of that, and we depend on those. Certainly, we do maintain a rather robust bookstore, and granted, you're not going to be able to buy as cheaply from us as you can from Amazon, because Amazon can offer the steep discounts that we can't. But you can either fund Jeff Bezos's next yacht, or you can fund historic trails preservation. Yeah. So I would encourage people to buy from us if possible. If we've got it in our online bookstore and you really want it, please think about doing that. We also offer immigrant certificates. So if you've got an ancestor was on the trail, we can provide you with a certificate of that person, and those are available on our website as well. We do have sustaining monthly gifts or donations. We have a number of people that just have their credit card set up that every month $10 or $20 or $25 comes out. It's much like a PBS subscription or an NPR subscription. You can sustain us with a monthly donation right from your credit card. Of course, our events are money-making opportunities for us. Registration fees, tour fees, etc. Those go right back into preservation and education and to the bottom line of running this organization. We only have 4 full-time and 1 half-time employee to administer what is ultimately, if you consider all the additional routes and cutoffs, about 10,000 miles of interconnected trails from the Midwest to the West Coast. And in addition, we have, I believe, 13 or 14 people that work in the National Trails Office. However, those people are administering 10 different national historic trails from that office. So they're spread pretty thin too. I say all this to say that there's a lot of opportunities for a person that might want to get involved in preserving this history in an active fashion.
Yeah. I mean, digitization alone, a person could spend their life doing it and still have 50% left to go.
Yeah. And the donations keep coming in. We've had to get a little more selective and turn down some donations, especially if it's things that are really duplicates or things that are pretty common.
Right.
Most people, their personal libraries just have a lot of very common books that we have plenty of copies of. But those ones that are out there, the person has collected diaries. And I should really emphasize that most of these diaries that we get aren't the original diaries. We do have some original diaries. They're often typescripts, and somebody has taken the time to read that longhand 19th century cursive writing that's difficult to read,
right,
and typed it up into a typescript that's then been shared with us. I will say I'm kind of I pro and con the development of artificial intelligence a lot. One of the pros is that at about a 90% accuracy rate right now, artificial intelligence can read those longhand diaries or letters and correctly transcribe them. I mean, a lot of times you can figure out the other 10% or so from context. So that's certainly a shortcut. Years ago, our volunteers created an index to something like, 3,000 or 4,000 diaries that they had surveyed in various collections around the country. And that index was all done by hand. So they read every single page and they wrote down every single name, every single geographic location, every single tribe, pretty much any number of oxen, horses, mules, wagons in the train. And so you can go to a separate website we manage. It's called paper-trail.org. And it is a fee-based entree to especially genealogists that want those names that are in diaries. Because it's not just the name of the diarist, it's anybody that diarist encountered. And sometimes there's hundreds of people listed in that diary, and you might find some of your ancestors in somebody else's diary. I certainly have. But that was all done by hand in the 80s and 90s. Well, we're at the point now where we can redo that. And one of the things we want to fund in the near future is exactly that, to digitize these diaries into searchable PDFs and let artificial intelligence scroll them. It will automatically, within literally a matter of minutes, create an index for us. So we're in the beginning discussions of doing that. So if there's any listeners that have interest in that, expertise in that, knowledge in that, funding available for that, we would love for you to join OCTA.
Fantastic. Yeah, that'll be great to have that. And then I can go and get a immigrant trail certificate once I find my ancestor in the data.
Yes, indeed.
And you mentioned membership, and you mentioned that the cost of membership is somewhere around $65 for an individual for a year, right?
Yes. So we have a variety. It's actually 60. I misspoke earlier.
Okay.
So our base memberships are for student. It's generally college students, but high school students are welcome to. It's $20 a year. It's greatly discounted because the cost of your membership, we've ascertained that's probably somewhere in the $50 a year range for us just to maintain your membership. So obviously having college students is a loss for us, but we feel at the same time it's a gain because we hope to have them for their life. And a college student is a lot younger than a retiree, and we hope to have them around a lot longer. And we also understand being in college, you often don't have a lot of resources.
Right.
We also offer a reduced rate for educators, whether at a elementary, middle, or high school or collegiate level, and that's $45 a year. Again, it's a loss leader, but we recognize the value of having educators sharing this with young people, and so we want them to join. Our base membership of $60 a year, we barely make any money on that at all. A few dollars per, because of the cost of your publications, the cost of administrative time to administer that membership eats up the lion's share of that. However, again, many of our members donate above and beyond, but more importantly, they donate their time and their energy to this endeavor. A family membership runs $75. It's generally a husband and wife, but can include children as well. And then we have higher level memberships at 100 and 125 a year, and all of the additional things that come with that are listed on our website. We also offer a life membership. So you pay a one-time fee of $1,500. We put that $1,500 in its entirety into our endowment. It's one of the ways that we've built our endowment over time is to get life members. Our board made a decision long ago to put that entire amount into the endowment in the hopes that it would grow. And I mentioned already that it's pretty much 5 times bigger now than when I started.
Good.
So that's been a beneficial thing for us. So it's always nice that, now we've got you for life. You're always going to get that mailing, that publication. You're always going to get invites to all the events. You never have to worry about renewing. So those are our variety of memberships. Then we also have our chapters. There's 11 chapters. Most of them cost around $10, some a little bit more to join. I should also mention that we offer business memberships. So for $50 a year, if you're a business member, you'll get a decal that you can hang in your window and proudly display that you are a member of the Oregon California Trails Association. We share that information on our website so that our members know when they're out traveling the trails that they should visit these businesses that support the trails. We offer an institutional level, so that's largely museums and libraries at $300 a year. And I should mention one of the things that you get at any level of membership, including at that institutional level, is access to paper trail for the entirety of your membership. So you will have that full-time access to that great index of trail diaries. And our final level is our corporate level at $1,250 a year. We do have a number of corporate supporters. Again, we promote those people heavily as people that support the trail. We want our members to do business with them as well.
Yeah, I mean, you produce a quarterly newsletter and a quarterly magazine, and depending on the level of membership, people have access to those things.
Yeah, the other great thing about membership is you get full access to the entire 44-year run of the Overland Journal and the News from the Plains. They're all digitized. They're all on our website. Every quarter we put up a new one, and you can just download those as PDFs and read them at your leisure.
Think about this, folks. You get octa-journal.org, paper-trail.org, a magazine, a newsletter. Then you can go and join your regional chapter and support them. It's just a great organization. Travis, I didn't know about OCTA until I did a little research and found OCTA. It just never came up on my radar for whatever reason, but I'll be joining OCTA just to let you know.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. We really appreciate that.
Not a problem at all. Do you have any annual gatherings or celebrations that have significance for the local community or the chapters? You mentioned the annual get-together that occurs once a year and is going to be held in California.
Yeah, so this year's in Chico, California. third week of September, and that is our annual convention, conference, if you will. Next year will be Burley, Idaho, which is south central Idaho, right on the Snake River. We do not yet have a location for 2028, but that moves around the country, really between the Missouri River Valley and the West Coast. Last year we were in Pendleton, Oregon. In recent years, we've been in Casper, Wyoming, Gearing, and Scottsbluff, Nebraska. We also have our spring symposium, which moves around the country this year. It's in Independence, Missouri. We're looking strongly at Fort Smith, Arkansas next year. There is a southern route to this trail that a lot of people don't know about. It is not designated as National Historic Trail, but a lot of people did jump off from places like Fort Smith, Arkansas, or Fayetteville, Arkansas, or even the Texas Gulf Coast. There are trails that cross Texas and southern New Mexico and Arizona. There is also congressional legislation pending right now that would add an additional 26 routes and cutoffs of the primary branches of the Oregon and California Trail. We have a separate piece of legislation we would love to get through that would establish the southern route to California as part of the National Historic Trail. So if any of the listeners out there have expertise in lobbying and advocacy in Congress that would be willing to step up and help us navigate that labyrinth of federal decision makers to get these bills across the finish line, we would really appreciate that. I should back up and mention that 26 additional routes and cutoffs and tell you the journey that's been on. When I started with OCTA in 2003, there was an older couple named Bill and Jean Watson. And Bill and Jean was a retired museum director, and Bill was retired from a career with AT&T. And they volunteered for decades. And one of the bills they got done before they passed was to get a study to at least look at it was about 78 additional routes and cutoffs just to see if they qualified for National Historic Trail status. They finally got that passed in 2009. It took about 10 years for the National Park Service to conduct the study, which then they had to transmit to the Department of Interior and on up to Congress. So it's at the final step now. 26 of those 78 reached that level that the Park Service met the criteria. Now we need a sponsor in Congress to get us across the finish line to actually make those 26 additional routes and cutoffs part of the National Historic Trail System, which means our federal partners can now work on those. They can provide funding for road signage, for interpretation, for websites, for pamphlets, for handouts, for all kinds of things that they can't do right now. So if you're in a local community that might have a piece of this trail passing through it, and you're frustrated that the National Park Service doesn't seem to care, it's not that they don't care, it's just they legally can't work on that piece of trail. So we always need more help on the legislative front as well. We did have, we think, a sponsor in Utah. Celeste Malloy is a representative from Utah, and she does seem to indicate that she wants to help us with that 26 additional routes and cutoffs. I know Congress has about a bazillion other things before it right now, and I don't know where we are on the pecking order. I suspect not very high. But I also know there's always public lands bills being debated right now. The Department of Interior's budget is being discussed on Capitol Hill. Hopefully before the January 30th deadline, they get that across the finish line. We all know we're operating on continuing resolutions right now. So that's yet another area where people can volunteer, maybe an area you normally wouldn't think of, but people that have expertise and knowledge in government machinations, or especially if they have personal connections to congressmen or senators, that's so beneficial to us.
All right. Travis, I think we ought to take a break for a minute.
Okay.
All right. Listeners, we'll be right back after these important messages.
Do you feel a pull toward history? Not just reading about it, but standing where it happened? Do you enjoy learning how ordinary people shaped extraordinary change? Do you have ancestors who made the journey west? If so, there is a place for you in the Oregon-California Trails Association, And membership may be the most meaningful way you can connect with America's westward story. OCTA is more than an organization. It is a community of historians, researchers, educators, outdoor enthusiasts, land stewards, families, and lifelong learners, all united by a shared respect for the historic American emigrant trails. When you become an OCTA member, you're not just signing up for a newsletter, you're joining a nationwide network of people dedicated to preserving, understanding, and sharing the stories of the Oregon and California trails. Membership includes access to Overland Journal, OCTA's respected publication featuring original research, trail studies, historical essays, and field discoveries. You'll gain opportunities to participate in local and regional chapter events, guided trail tours and field outings, preservation projects and volunteer work, educational programs and symposiums, conversations with experts who study and protect trail history. And perhaps most importantly, you'll gain connection. Connection to the land, connection to history, connection to others who care deeply about preservation. You don't need to be a professional historian. You don't need to own land or hike miles of trail. You only need curiosity and a desire to help keep history alive. National OCTA membership begins at $60 per year, with additional chapter options available depending on your location and interests. That modest annual commitment helps fund preservation work, educational outreach, publications, and advocacy efforts that protect trail segments across multiple states. It also sends a clear message that this history matters, that these trails matter, that stewardship matters.
Whether you are new to trail history or have spent years studying westward expansion, OCTA welcomes you. There's room for families, room for students, room for retirees, room for anyone who believes that America's story is worth protecting on the ground where it happened. To learn more or to join today, visit octa-trails.org/members. Become part of something lasting. Become part of the preservation effort. Become part of the story. Join the Oregon-California Trails Association and help ensure that the trails which carried America west remain visible, protected, and understood for generations to come.
And now, here's a little nugget for you. History is not just a record of what happened before, it's a testament to human resilience, creativity, and evolution. Support your local historical society or museum, and keep your local history alive.
9 out of 10 listeners agree Preservation Oaks is the best podcast on the internet.
You're listening to Preservation Oaks, where new episodes are created for you every 2 weeks. That's 26 episodes per season. Let me see, that's like 182 in-dog episodes. Right?
Here's a list of the essentials you'll need to renovate your bathroom whenever you get the time. Safety mask, gloves, goggles, caulking gun, propane torch, silicone sealant, tape measure, putty knives, stud finder, tiles, pry bar, power drill, bucket, chisel, adjustable wrench, screwdrivers, hacksaw, utility knife, several strong cups of coffee, chalk line, paint, brushes, flooring, tub enclosure, plumbing essentials, and an extension cord. And here's a list of the essentials you'll need to volunteer at your local genealogical or historical society instead. A smile. A handshake. An ability to meet and greet people and have fun, a knowledge of local history, research skills. Enjoy volunteering at your local genealogical or historical society today. That's very helpful of you, and benefits your community.
And now, back to Preservation Oaks.
Welcome back to Preservation Oaks. I'm your host, Sean Radcliff, and we're here with Travis Boley from the Oregon-California Trails Association. Travis, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to be back.
Now, does your association, the National Association, does it push out education to the chapters, or how does that work as far as the chapters go? And then my second question along that line is, does the National Association reach out to the community and engage people in learning about the Oregon-California Trail history?
The education stuff largely happens at a chapter level. What the national office is able to do, we're able to post all of these things on our website. I mentioned in the previous installment that we partnered with the Independence Missouri School District to create curriculum that lets kids, in this case, 8th graders, download original trail journals, and they learn the trail history that way. Those things are certainly replicable at a chapter level. And a lot of times we do attract a number of teachers and retired teachers. And so a chapter's strength or weakness in that field is really dependent upon the members that we have. One of my board members is a recently retired teacher from Hermiston, Oregon. Her name's Jenny Miller. And Jenny's has sons, and so she's been very involved in scouting, very involved in teaching. And now that she's retired, she's very excited to continue to see those areas grow. But that really comes down to a person willing to take on that hands-on role. You know, being a national level administrator with limited time to travel to what amounts to probably 17 or 18 states across the American West, you know, there's only so much I and my four and a half employees can do.
Yeah.
We're really dependent upon the chapters, especially the retired or active teachers, professors. I will mention right now, I've been working with a professor from Southern Oregon University. He's developed a really novel concept. He's got this thing called Return to the Past, or the RTTP program. And in the past, he's developed 2 such opportunities. They're really interactive, immersive, semester-long opportunities for students to learn a subject. In the past, he did, I think it was Athens circa 300 BC, and he did South African apartheid. He has developed one now for the Oregon Trail. And so at the beginning of the semester, you're selecting your wagon train with your classmates, you're in Independence, you're setting out for Oregon, and you're using these primary source documents in the Merrill Mattis Library to do this. I believe something like 300 American universities and colleges subscribe to the RTT program. So if we can get this off the ground, we're going to have this new exciting vehicle to share trail history. And it is scalable down to a 1-day session. So if somebody wanted to come into a museum or have like a corporate retreat and do this kind of a fun team building exercise. I know the Truman Library has what they call their White House Decision Center. And I've sat through their program before. One of the things they do is each person is a cabinet member on the team. And they've done this with students and with corporate team leaders. So you're a cabinet member and one person is Truman, and everybody gets a dossier, and there's certain information in that nobody else has. And you're trying to build a consensus on what do we do with the Berlin airlift, or what do we do with the atomic weapons that we now have? Those types of real situations that the Truman administration found themselves in, you can replicate. Same thing with this Return to the Past program that this professor is developing. We could do this with the Oregon Trail on a 1-day session or a semester-long session. I did write right before Christmas, the National Park Foundation invited people to submit a 3-page letter of interest for funding. And so I did submit to them a 3-page letter of interest to fund this program, and it would be in 2 pieces. One would be able to fund an administrator for the program, and the other would be to fund additional digitization of our collections, because it really hinges on access to those primary source documents, which largely reside in the Mattis Library here in Independence. So to really do this in an acceptable way, we need to get a lot more of our collection online. And I've asked for a substantial amount of money to accomplish that. It's well into the tens of thousands of dollars. I won't say exactly how much, but I think it would allow us to bite off a bigger piece than we normally bite off, be able to probably hire an outside firm to come in and do a lot of this work for us and get it done faster.
Wow, very cool. That's exciting. Very cool.
Yeah, fingers crossed that the National Park Foundation invites us to submit a full proposal.
Yeah. I noticed on your website you also have a section for educational resources and school resources to help communities educate the students on the Oregon-California trails.
Yeah, that was developed again by a number of professional educators involved in our organization. Some of what you'll see there is what I mentioned earlier, the eighth grade curriculum that is scalable and adaptable up and down. There's a link to that right on our website. If you go to octa-trails.org, it's /school-resources. We'll take you to all of this. Back in 2008, we had a donor, a guy named Malcolm Smith. Malcolm Smith's worth talking about. Malcolm was a former marketing executive in Manhattan. He had a beautiful old 1698 Dutch home on the North Shore of Long Island. I went to his house one time. It was a beautiful home. His family were some of the original Dutch settlers in what was then New Amsterdam. Malcolm told me a funny story. He said he was 17 years old. It was in the 1930s. He was always in trouble. His parents were getting ready to send him to military school in New Hampshire. Well, his parents set sail for Europe for vacation, and he was left to his own devices. So, of course, he stole the family car and headed west. And he gets to Nebraska, and the car breaks down. So he did the logical thing. He jumped on the next train and continued west. And he wound up in a little town called Guernsey, Wyoming. And Guernsey is in very eastern Wyoming, and there's a state park there. And that state park has probably some of the deepest wagon ruts you can see to this day. I encourage your listeners to go to a search engine, type in Guernsey ruts, Guernsey ruts, and they will see ruts that are probably in some cases 4, 5, 6 feet deep. They're cut through sandstone, so soft rock. And it's just really, in 2025, when I was last there, it was so engaging. I can only imagine what it was like in the 1930s. But it captured Malcolm's imagination. This 17-year-old kid fell in love with the trail. And so here he is. He lived to be probably north of 100. I'm not exactly sure how old he was, but he made this substantial gift to us. And he really wanted us to use it to educate young people. So we leveraged that to additional gifts, wound up raising close to $500,000. And we created this documentary called In Pursuit of a Dream. And what we did was we did casting calls in Boston, Denver, and Sacramento. Collected something like 24 kids. It's been a while since we did this. I think it was 24 kids, junior high through high school age. All different races, religions, backgrounds, economic backgrounds, what have you, city, rural kids, and brought them all together in Wyoming. We were very fortunate. We have this member. His name's Dave Vixie. Dave was fresh off winning the Disney National Teacher of the Year. Dave teaches in a private school in Paradise, California, and every year he takes his junior high students out on the trail somewhere, and for a week, they are dressed as pioneers. They have a covered wagon, they have mules, and they're making decisions just like the pioneers would. I mean, if every kid could go through this, all our problems would be solved. But unfortunately, he's just one guy. And we had a couple of other teachers from Wyoming that were the state teachers of the year. So the three of them kind of led this adventure across Wyoming and into Oregon. These kids got really authentic trail experiences. So back in the days of DVDs, we created a DVD. It did the Film Circuits Festival. It really brought this to a high level. We created curriculum all around it. And we still have that video available. We are in the process of making a digital copy available now. But that's inspired us to keep going. We've since created other really high-level documentaries. We did one a couple of years ago called On the California Trail, Preserving Gravelly Ford, which is a location about 30 miles west of Elko. And in that case, we partnered with Nevada Gold Mines. Nevada Gold Mines owns a lot of property out there, and they had about 7 miles of perfectly preserved trail going through their property. And their good graces, they put a conservation easement on that piece of trail so it can never be developed. And they gave us money to create a documentary about that piece of trail. So we got our preservation officer out there, John Winter, came out with our film crew out of North Hollywood, and we developed this beautiful film that we entered into something called the Spur Awards. And the Spur Awards are given by the Western Writers of America. And I liken winning a Spur Award to kind of winning the Academy Awards of Western content. And we finished runner-up. We had the bad misfortune of entering the same year that Ken Burns entered his American Bison documentary. So we felt pretty good on our $100,000 movie losing to probably a $15 million movie by the renowned Ken Burns. But that's just some of the examples of what we've done with funding to bring this mass education to people. We did another video where we got a grant from South Dakota Humanities to engage this man named Doug Hansen. He's got a shop outside of this little town called Letcher, South Dakota. It's about 10 miles north of Mitchell, which is famous for its corn palace. And what he does is he recreates, builds from scratch, or restores wagons and stagecoaches. And he's gotten so good at this, he's now got about a dozen guys that works for him, master craftsmen. They use 19th century tools. So pretty much any movie you've watched in Hollywood over the last 30 years or so, from Dances with Wolves to Yellowstone to The Hateful Eight, just about anything, those wagons, those stagecoaches, Doug likely made them. He's made them for national parks and state historic sites and museums. He's restored old wagons. So we did a documentary about him, just what goes into restoring a wagon, but also, the history of these, because he's kind of a reverse engineer. He went to the Autry Museum in Los Angeles one time, and they've got a stagecoach on display there. And he went there and he photographed every angle, he measured every piece, and he went back to his shop and he perfectly recreated it. And we captured on film the day he rolled it out of his shop after it got its fresh paint. I mean, I've been to the Autry and I've seen that stagecoach, and I photographed both of them. I put them side by side, and I really can't tell the difference. That's how good Doug is. But that's the kind of stuff we do on the education front for adults. Those things were shown on PBS. They live on our YouTube channel as well. You can find them there. We also publish books. We have another retired teacher from Long Island, a guy named Bill Hill, who's written a number of books. He's written one on the Oregon and California Trail, the Mormon Trail, Lewis and Clark, Pony Express. They're fun workbooks, activity books for kids. We've got lesson plans and PDFs and PowerPoints in English and Spanish you can download that teachers have developed over the years and given to us. It is a very robust section, and it's all free. So you don't have to join anything. You can just go to our education section and download all of this.
Fantastic. Thank you for doing that for people.
Absolutely. That's part of our mission. We're very serious about that dual preservation education mission. And I feel like with more volunteers, we could do more. With more funding, we could do more.
Travis, can you tell us about any awards your association gives out and the achievements they celebrate?
Well, I would say probably the first one, and it's probably the most fun one, is we have a student calendar contest where we invite students really of all ages to submit artwork related to the trail. I think last year we did immigrants and Indians, tools, utensils, and equipment. I'm not sure what the 26 version is yet, but those will be on our website. There'll be a form you can download. Any teacher can do this. A lot of times teachers will do this and then have their students create something. And then we list all of the kids. I think it's a dozen or 13 get selected. So their pictures get put in a calendar. We then sell the calendars. And it's just a fun thing to do with kids. But then obviously we offer a number of adult awards. One of those is the Outstanding Educator Award. I mentioned earlier that we did this film, In Pursuit of a Dream. We were very lucky to have both the National Teacher of the Year and 2 State Teachers of the Year, but we also offer our own Outstanding Educator Award. So if anybody listening knows of a teacher, professor who's really gone above and beyond teaching trail history to kids, to students, then please go to our website. This is at octa-trails.org/octa-awards. You can download the applications there. The due dates for those are there. We generally give those out at our annual gathering. So this year that would be in September in Chico, California. And the other awards that we offer are really more designed for people with really close ties to OCTA, not always members, but usually members. So one is the Merrill Mattis Award, and that award is given to the best article submitted to the Overland Journal. I mentioned at the outset that we publish a quarterly scholarly journal, usually features 3, sometimes 4 articles. So you're generally in competition with upwards of anywhere from a dozen to 16 articles a year. The best of those will win the Mattis Award. Mattis, again, was the National Park Service's historian in the 40s and 50s, and was an excellent writer himself. Our founder of our organization, Gregory Francois, we named the Meritorious Achievement Award after him. That is the highest award that OCTA gives. It recognizes long-term and significant contributions, and only members of the association can qualify for the Meritorious Service Award. We've had a number of people that have literally devoted decades of their life. In some cases, I mistake them for full-time employees because I feel like they're keeping a 40 or 50-hour a week schedule doing this stuff. And I'm not even joking. They're that passionate about this stuff. And those are the types of people that win Meritorious Service Awards. Dave Welch, our mapping and marking chair, was past president of OCTA, also a really, really excellent preservationist. And our Preservation Award is named for him. So anybody that does a special effort towards preservation doesn't necessarily have to be a member. Somebody that's gone above and beyond preserve and protect a historic site related to the trails would win the Dave Welch Preservation Award. We also offer distinguished volunteer awards, somebody who's contributed significantly to achieving goals and projects. Only an OCTA member could win a distinguished volunteer award. We offer a distinguished service award. Those typically go to organizations, businesses, government agencies, and sometimes even individuals. These are people who are participating in furthering our programs. and they provide substantial support in other preservation or education. Our Friend of the Trail Award is always a fun one. I mentioned earlier that trail on private property has lesser protection. And a lot of times it's usually a rancher or farmer, somebody that has a substantial land holding that has a significant piece of trail going through it. And they've kind of gone above and beyond to promote that piece of trail, protect it, sometimes even provide access to the general public to see that piece of trail. And they can win Friend of the Trail Award. We offer a Young Octan Award. We do really try to get kids and young adults involved. This is for people between the ages of 6 and 21 who have demonstrated a particular interest in OCTA and the history or preservation of historic immigrant trails. We even have national certificates of appreciation typically given to people who've served an office or helped achieve a short-term goal, and we'll give out numbers of those. And then, of course, our local chapters have their own awards. All of these things can be found on our website, including the applications. If you want to join OCTA and try to vie for one of those awards, you can. There are other awards that don't require membership, but especially Educator of the Year, Young Octans, things like that. Please do let us know. Sometimes we don't know the work that people are out there doing. One example I'll share is that southern route, California, that jumps off across Texas. There's really no concerted effort in Texas. Texas is such a massive state; it's hard to organize around it. So our membership is rather scattered, and there's kind of this general feeling that maybe people don't know a whole lot about it. But what I discovered was by going to local museums, especially local county historical societies, you'll often find that the people that work there or volunteer there are a wealth of knowledge about a piece of trail through their area. Yeah. They might know everything about that trail from one end of the county to the other, or from one end of their town to the other, and not much else. They don't know it in overall context, but they know that little piece, and that's important. We can weave that together in a meaningful tapestry. So again, it's a lot of times that people are out there doing this stuff, and we never know about it. And this is your opportunity to put those people in front of us and celebrate them for what they've done.
It's nice that you recognize people,
Well, I mean, we can't pay you, but we can certainly laud you with laurels and awards and plaques and trophies. So
yeah, especially people who work hard and volunteer and make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely deserve recognition. If you've gone and done, some extraordinary piece of work and you didn't expect anything in return for it, just the love of doing it, we want to recognize you. We want to celebrate you. We want people to be aware of what you've done.
Yep. Does OCTA have any scholarship programs that support students?
Not at the moment. However, if this grant that we want to write with the National Forest Foundation goes through, our intention is to bring a lot of students, especially at Chico State, out into the field, archaeology and history students. So in the past, we've won grants to hire interns. Right now, we don't have any grants out there for that. If anybody knows of any grant opportunities or any universities that would like to partner with us in that way, we would love to do so. We have had some discussions with the University of Nebraska at Kearney, which has a pretty active public history program. We're hopeful to develop something meaningful with our Park Service partners. To date, we haven't done that, but we really look at this opportunity to map and mark that 6 miles of trail through the Lassen National Forest. We think that's a perfect opportunity for students at Chico State to get involved in. We're hopeful that we can augment a donation we got with an additional money from the National Forest Foundation to accomplish that.
Great. And it's great that the federal government supports OCTA.
Yeah, I guess I liken it to being a private-public partnership. The feds obviously have limited capabilities, and I think it's a lot easier for them a lot of times to just funnel money to a nonprofit that can in turn use that to reimburse volunteer expenses. And we're pretty meticulous about the record keeping that's required, the number of hours, any reimbursable or non-reimbursed things like whatever. You had an overnight in a hotel, or you had gas receipt, or your daily per diem for food. We document that. So we're very, very confident there's no fraud in any of that. It'd be very difficult to do. And besides, we're not talking about massive amounts of money. These are relatively small amounts of money, especially in terms of the federal budget. We're talking like a grain of sand on a massive beach is about what we get. But the federal funding that we do get is so important because a lot of our volunteers are retirees, which means they generally have limited income. They want to participate, but sometimes can't to the level they want because they can't afford an overnight in a hotel. They can't afford that extra tank of gas. They can't afford to eat out for 3 or 4 days while they're working on a project. But with that little bit of enticement from the federal coffers to reimburse their expenses, the federal government gets the equivalent of a full-time employee working on a project and only really has to cover the cost of having them there. And I think it's a great win for the American people.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you've mentioned a few books. You've mentioned the historical book, Inscriptions on Western Trails
Yes.
by Randy Brown,
Yes.
the Oregon Trail book,
Rinkerbuck.
Yes. And then you also mentioned the Oregon Trail Revisited book by Greg
Francois. Yes.
And are there any other notable books or guides or articles your association has published, and what topics do they cover?
Well, we used to do a little bit more publishing. We don't do as much these days, but we've taken some of the better immigrant diaries over time and published those. They're in either hardback or paperback version. We have another book that we sell, a guy named Andy Hammond and his wife Joanne wrote, and it's basically a book of excerpts of some of the better quotes from a variety of diaries.
Yeah, you have some great books at your bookstore.
Yeah, we really do. OCTA does have a publications arm. In the past, we have published some of the more notable diaries that you can buy as either paperback or hardback. Now deceased member and his wife, Andy and Joanne Hammond, wrote a book, a collection of some of the better trail diary quotes on a variety of subjects. There's a lesser-known trail across central Idaho that one of our members wrote on that. So we do publish a number of things. We also carry other publications. Right now, there's a fairly new book out called Jim Bridger, Trailblazer of the American West by Jerry Hensler. Jerry's actually going to speak at our symposium here in April, so it's an opportunity to get your book signed as well. The achievements of African Americans on the trail. Jim Beckworth was a mountain man who has a pass or a piece of trail named for him, Beckworth Trail. He also lived with the Crow for a number of years, and we document him. And there's a guy named Joseph Childs. He was from here in Jackson County, Missouri, and he blazed a trail from Boise into Northern California. There's kind of an unknown and largely forgotten piece of trail called the Childs Cutoff. He's documented in a book called Forgotten Trailblazer by one of his descendants. Of course, all our publications in the Overland Journal could be compiled into a great book. We've got books about Ezra Meeker. I mean, there's no end to the number of books. I would hesitate to recommend one over the other because everybody's got their personal favorites. I pretty much love all of them. I've read a bazillion books, and I would just say people go through our website. If you've got questions, drop us an email. We'll help guide you. If you've got a certain area, subject matter that's interesting to you, let us know. We'll try to match you up with the right publication.
Fantastic. Thank you. Now, I want to provide listeners with the contact information for the association. Once again, their website is OCTA-trails.org. Their mailing address is P.O. Box 1019, Independence, Missouri, 64051. Their physical address, if you want to visit, is 524 South Osage Street, Independence, Missouri, 64050. The phone number is 816-252-2276. Let's not forget that Travis mentioned the website called paper-trails.org, where you can find, I think, Travis, its ancestors listed in the journals.
Yeah, it's actually paper-trail.org, and it's an index to about 4,000 different diaries. So any person, place, Indian tribe, oxen, cattle, horses, wagons, whatever, are all indexed there. So rather than read an entire diary, if you're just looking for a particular name, you can enter that name into the search engine and see if it pops up, and then you'll know where to find that diary, whether it's in a library or a museum or a personal private collection, or maybe even in our collection. That website would be your guide.
That is very cool. And then you also mentioned octa-journals.org. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's where we have all of our digitized diaries, our back issues of Overland Journal, News from the Plains, and other ephemera are all located there. Much of it's free. As a member, you would get access to the Overland Journal and News from the Plains and all the back issues.
And the Oregon California Trails Association email is OCTA, OCTA, at indepmo.org.
Yeah, that's short for Independence, Missouri. Indepmo.
Yep. And then On Facebook, you can find them at Oregon California Trails Association, and on Instagram at Oregon California Trails Association, and on YouTube at OCTA Trails. And please go there and look at their YouTube videos. There's a wealth of information, and the organization, the association, gets advertising dollars for you watching. So please go and like and subscribe. What kinds of information and resources can visitors find that you haven't already mentioned on your website that enhances their experience?
Well, there's a number of interactive maps that are there, lots of places to visit and see on your own. So some of the other things that are on our website that we haven't already discussed, we have an Immigrant Trails Hall of Fame. We've looked both at people from the 19th century and the modern day that have gone above and beyond to either establish the trail, done something heroic on the trail, maybe done something to help preserve the trail. So we're pretty passionate about that. We have videos on our YouTube channel at their induction, as well as pages on our webpage about that. We have a speakers bureau. So if you, say, belong to a service club like Rotary or Lions Club or Kiwanis, we have people that can come out and speak to your group to tell you more about local opportunities, local events and happenings. I'll give you an example. One of the places that our California, Nevada chapter engages with regularly is a place called the Fernley Swells. Now, Fernley is a little truck stop town out on I-80, a little 30 minutes or so east of Reno. And it's got a really beautiful, intact swale. A swale is what we call a deep depression in the ground. So many wagons went over it. It's just created kind of this, almost looks like an ocean wave. It goes down and back up the other side. It's a swell. And this one goes through some sand. The big problem, though, is it's because it's adjacent to a truck stop, it's adjacent to the interstate, is I think a lot of people view it as their personal dumping ground. So burnt out cars and washing machines and tires and bags of trash will wind up there. So every year, there's a thing called Public Lands Day. It happens every September. So we organize the local community. It usually involves the scouts, some service clubs, OCTA members, and they go out there with dumpsters and tow trucks, and they just cart all that garbage out of there. Now, it'd be nice if that didn't happen, but people being people, I think some people have just got accustomed to that's where they dump stuff, and eventually someone will take it away for them. That's just one of the many types of service projects that we get engaged in. We do ask that, as you're out enjoying these things, we adhere strictly to the Leave No Trace program. Pack out what you pack in, leave nothing but your footprints, and just be respectful of the environment around you. Leave it pristine for the next person who visits. If you show up and it's trash, pick it up. Right. I take my dogs on a walk every night. A lot of times we'll walk in a local cemetery, and unfortunately some people have started dumping tires and old couches and stuff in there, and it's become it's a cemetery, for crying out loud. People have some respect. But no, I see that regularly, so I've gotten accustomed to just carrying a trash bag with me and picking stuff up as I go.
Thank goodness you do. Now, can you describe once again how people can donate? And you mentioned recurring, that they can go to your website and they can put in their credit card number and they can do a recurring donation as well.
Yes, they can. So if you go to octa-trails.org/donate-to-OCTA, you will come to our donation page, and you'll see a button there that just says Donate to OCTA. And if you click on that, up will pop a page that will allow you to either make a one-time donation or set up a recurring donation. There's a little drop-down bar. It'll say select donation frequency, one-time, monthly, semi-annually, or annually. And you can even add a note for the donor scroll, why you're donating, what you want it to go towards. And maybe you want to leave it in memory of someone. You can honor or remember someone with your gift. So I encourage you to please visit our website and help underwrite the work that we're doing out here for the American public.
Now, you mentioned also a couple of things where you need help right now with volunteers, additional volunteers, and with people to help with digitization and other things. Are there any other specific efforts or needs your organization currently has that people can contribute to?
I would say the two main things, they're both public outreach in a way. One would be people that are willing and able and capable of public speaking, being able to go in front of any group that'll have you. I've spoken to every service club under the sun. I've spoken to city councils and chambers of commerce, and I've spoken at festivals and heritage organizations, and it's I often hear what you've said in the past. I hadn't heard about you until I discovered you. And that's a battle that many historic organizations face constantly, is just getting your name out there. So just having someone capable of going out and public speaking, we make that very easy. We have a speakers bureau section on our website. You can download pre-made PowerPoints that pretty much have all your talking points. You can rehearse it a few times, just get comfortable with it, and go out and spread that gospel. The other thing is on the education front, just having those local contacts of people that can help us get our materials into the local school district, being able to let teachers and administrators know that these tools exist for free on our website. Those are kind of the two main things. Obviously, if people want to get involved with digitization, mapping, marking, we will train you how to do that. But I expect a lot of people have kids or grandkids in a local school, and maybe they want to just make that school aware of the resources that are available on our website, or if they've got some public speaking gifts, to be able to go out periodically and just let people know, hey, there's this organization out there doing great stuff in your neighborhood, and you need to know about it.
Yep. Do you help people? I mean, you've got paper-trail.org, the website, where people can find their ancestors. Do you do any other kind of genealogical help for people, for members or non-members?
Yeah, we do have some genealogists, and I've presented to some genealogy societies in the past. I will say we're a little bit more limited on that. It's not our primary focus. I know just been personally rewarding over the last 2 years to go through the notes that my grandmother left me and build on those, especially tying that people who did head west on these trails. But again, if somebody wanted to get active in OCTA, we used to have a genealogy committee, and it's largely dormant right now. So if folks wanted to get involved in that, and I say you'd probably work in hand in glove with the people doing digitization, because that's where most of that genealogical information is going to be found. Those primary source documents, those diaries, those letters people wrote home, those reminiscences they wrote after the fact, those are all full of rich information. And what I really love about it is, from my experience, when you're doing genealogy, it's largely just names on the paper that you've written down. And maybe you'll find their birth certificate, maybe you'll find their marriage certificate, maybe you'll find their death certificate, maybe you'll find them in the census. But it's tough to get a sense of who these people were.
Right.
And so if you see something that they've written, or something that somebody's written about them, you start to get a peek into their personality, which is a lot of fun. And that's probably the most rewarding thing for me of doing this, is just getting a glimpse at how people spoke, thought, and acted in the 19th century. And it's pretty radically different from how we do things in the 21st century.
Thing that would jazz me about finding my ancestor in the records that you have would be what struggle they went through to create a new future for their family.
I'll share a personal anecdote. I had some ancestors, Lewis ancestors, went west. There's a father and a man and his wife and 5 kids. By the time he gets to Oregon, he's got 2 kids. That's it. So he's lost 3 kids and a wife along the way. And they all died basically between central Idaho and about where the Portland International Airport stands today. That's where the final child died. And I've got his letters back to Missouri in my possession. And he's pretty matter of fact about things. I mean, he basically says, buried so-and-so here and so there. And he doesn't go into a whole lot of the grief that he's experiencing or anything like that. It's very matter of fact. People in the 19th century had a lot more personal connection to death. Death was a lot more common. People didn't live as long. People had a lot of kids. And the reason they were having a lot of kids is because a lot of kids died in infancy. Wives often died in childbirth. So death was a little more regular occurrence in the 19th century. And I don't know, I've seen other people definitely grieve in the pages, but my particular ancestor didn't really grieve, not at least on paper. He was very matter of fact about writing back to his relatives in Missouri of who made it and who didn't. And it's just like I say, a different relationship with death that people in the 21st century could never begin to grasp unless you've read enough of these diaries and see how people in the 19th century dealt with death. It's a lot more matter of fact than the way we deal with it in this day and age, I think.
Travis, is there any additional message or important information you'd like to share with the community or your members?
Just that, I mean, it's a real simple statement. It almost goes without saying, if you don't preserve it, who will? if you think these stories, if this moment in history is important to preserve and protect and promote and share with future generations, then it's really your duty to step up and do it. Service comes in many forms. I'm a member of my local Rotary Club here, and service above self is our motto. And we've got this 4-way test. Let's see if I can remember it. Let's see. Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? I can't remember the fourth one. Anyway, stuff like that. And I kind of take that to heart. Seriously, I've reached the age, my kids are largely grown. We've still got 3 in college. We've got 5 that are grown. And we've raised some pretty good young adults that are out there making a difference in society as well. But I view the sharing of history as the sharing of who we are as a people. And what's great about these trails, this is not, sometimes in the past, we've been accused of white people history.
Right.
And I recoil at that because this is not white people history. This is everybody's history. This is many religions, many races. It impacted people from all around the world. California Gold Rush, literally the world poured in. We know of thousands of Chinese that arrived. We know of Australians that arrived. We know of Mexicans that came north from Sonora. We know of Anglos that came from the East Coast. We know people that just came from literally all over the world to be there. We know of both free and enslaved African Americans who went west, either by force or by choice. We know the perilous nature of things when they arrived. The state of Oregon pretty much banned Black people from living there, period. We don't shy away from any of this stuff. We don't accept responsibility for it. It happened in the past. We're not responsible for it. What we are responsible for is preserving it as accurately as we possibly can. And I'll go back to what I said earlier. Good, bad, ugly, indifferent. It doesn't matter. If it occurred, we want to preserve it.
Yep.
And we take as seriously the preserving of the oral history shared by the people who were already there, the American Indians, as we do the written word of the people who got there, and maybe even some of the oral traditions passed down by the people who arrived. And it doesn't matter if you're Hispanic or African American or Chinese American or Anglo American. We don't care. What we care about is that we preserve as much of this history as possible, because only then can you really begin to have a full understanding of what it means to be an American. The other thing I've learned from doing my own genealogy, I had no clue. If I go back far enough, I have 3 great whatever grandmothers who were American Indians. I had no idea. I have 1 African American in my ancestry who was an enslaved person in Virginia in the 1600s. I had no idea. You look at me and you just think I'm a basic white man. That's how I present. But I find that the study of history, learning who you are, makes it almost impossible to be a bigot of any type, because you realize these people's DNA, their blood is coursing through your very own veins, and it would be self-loathing to hate yourself just because you don't like a certain race or ethnicity or religious person or whatever. I have a lot of people that became LDS. I'm not LDS myself, but I revere and respect what the church has done for preserving this history. I laud them to the ends of the earth. I hear a lot of negative things about LDS Mormon faith, both within my organization and without. I reject it wholeheartedly. Just because I don't share your faith doesn't mean I don't share your passion for preserving history. It's irrelevant to me what your politics, what your faith is, as long as you have that shared concern for the most accurate version of history possible. That's what I would like to share with your audience as the most important takeaway today.
Well said, and I share those sentiments very much. You're kind of my hero now, Travis, just so you know.
Please.
And I think you're a great role model. I really do.
Oh, I appreciate that.
I want to thank you so much for being here. I've learned so much about this, and I'm just thrilled by this moment in history that you represent. And it's a genuine pleasure to meet you and listen to your stories, listen to the information. I'm really inspired by the work you and your association do to preserve our heritage, and I'm deeply grateful for it. So thank you.
Well, I would say the same to you. I'm grateful for the work that you're doing, getting this out there to the general public to listen to and enjoy, and hopefully come out the other side enjoying one of these organizations that you're putting out in front of the American people. I appreciate what you do.
And with that, we'll end our time with our guest, Travis Boley. Listeners, please stay tuned for my comments and wrap-up, which is coming up next. As we bring our journey with the Oregon-California Trails Association to a close, I'd like to pause for just a moment to let the weight of what we've heard and learned truly settle in. Our guest, Mr. Travis Boley, Association Manager of the Oregon-California Trails Association in Independence, Missouri, is not just a historian. He is a living steward of one of the most profound human movements in world history. Between 1840 and 1870, nearly 500,000 men, women, and children left everything they knew and walked, rode, and rolled across more than 2,000 miles of wilderness to build new lives, and tens of thousands never made it. Through Travis's storytelling, we didn't just hear dates and places. We heard the voices of people who crossed rivers without bridges, crossed deserts without water, crossed mountains without maps, and crossed the thin line between survival and tragedy every single day. We heard about unmarked graves buried beneath wagon ruts so wolves wouldn't disturb the dead. We heard about cholera outbreaks that wiped out entire wagon trains. We heard about landmarks, Chimney Rock, Scotts Bluff, Independence Rock, Devil's Gate, that once meant hope, fear, exhaustion, and wonder all at the same time. But we also heard something else that matters just as much. We heard that this history is not finished, because even today, pioneer diaries are still being discovered in attics and closets. Graves are still being found by cadaver dogs. Names are still being identified. Stories are still being recovered. And the Oregon-California Trails Association is standing at the center of it all. Travis told us about their extraordinary library and archives in Independence, one of the largest trail research collections anywhere, filled with original pioneer journals, maps, letters, and field notes. He told us about thousands of diaries, including massive new collections being donated by families who want to make sure these voices are not lost. And he told us how OCTA is now working to digitize and preserve these fragile records so students, researchers, and families around the world can access them. This is not a museum frozen in time. This is active history in motion, and OCTA's reach goes far beyond Missouri. Across the West, their trail centers help tell this story. The National Frontier Trails Museum in Elko, Nevada, the Trails Center in Casper, Wyoming, the Oregon Trail Interpretive Center in Baker City, Oregon, the Trails Center in Montpelier, Idaho. Along with 11 active regional chapters, OCTA members are out in the field marking trails, restoring pioneer cemeteries, mapping wagon routes, protecting archaeological sites, recording graves, working with landowners, and making sure modern development does not erase the physical traces of the past. And that work is not done by a distant bureaucracy, but by volunteers, retired teachers, engineers, scouts, local historians, genealogists, students, families, people who simply care enough to show up and say, this still matters. Right now, the Oregon-California Trails Association needs more people to step forward. They need volunteers, archivists and curators to help care for the growing collections, transcribers to turn handwritten diaries into searchable history, digitization teams, public speakers and educators, and community advocates who will protect trail sites when development threatens them. If you're a teacher, librarian, professor, museum professional, or school administrator, I want to speak to you directly for just a moment. The OCTA website holds an extraordinary educational treasure trove. Primary source, pioneer diaries, trail maps, videos, lesson materials, and living experts like Travis and his team who are available to speak to your students. If you want young people to understand how this country was built, not in slogans, but in sweat, sacrifice, and courage, this is where you connect. And there's another way you can help that costs you nothing but a click. OCTA runs an active YouTube channel called @OCTATrails, where they publish trail documentaries, archaeological projects, cadaver dog investigations, cemetery restorations, and historical deep dives. When you subscribe and watch their videos, the association earns revenue that goes straight back into preservation and education. It truly makes a difference. If today's episode moved you, and I know it did, here is how you can stay connected. Their website is OCTA, OCTA, that's octa-trails.org. You can go to paper-trail.org to look for ancestors listed who were known to have traversed the trails. You can go to octa-journals.org to read some of the pioneer journals from people who made the journey across America's pioneer trails. Their mailing address is P.O. Box 1019, Independence, Missouri 64051. Their physical address is 524 South Osage Street, Independence, Missouri 64050. Their phone number is 816-252-2276. You can email them at octa@indepmo.org. You can find them on Facebook at Oregon California Trails Association, on Instagram at Oregon California Trails Association, and on YouTube at OCTA Trails. And mark your calendar, September 2026, Chico, California. That's where OCTA will host its annual convention, bringing together historians, trail advocates, educators, archaeologists, and preservationists from across the nation. And there's still so much to be done to go even deeper into the trails, the graves, the mysteries, and the preservation battles still being fought today. So please consider getting involved to keep these uniquely American trails preserved and the memory of what happened in our history taught to students all across the nation. We did 2 parts for this episode because this OCTA conversation is so important and special. By doing 2 episodes, Travis had the space to bring both the scholarship and the humanity forward. And that's what makes this episode resonate so deeply. Thank you for listening. Now, if questions occur to you and you'd like more information, please connect with the association via the contact information provided. If you're a listener in the area the association serves, or if you're a listener researching ancestors who made the trail journey, please consider joining and supporting them with your generous donations. I hope this information helps the audience understand how valuable the Oregon California Trail Association is to our nation. The Oregon California Trails Association is truly one of our preservation oaks. All right, that's a wrap for part 2 and this episode. Music used today is from Cymbalbird, Premium Beat, Music Dog, and Scott Holmes. Hey, this is Sean Radcliff. See you all next time on Preservation Oaks. And until then, keep on giving and keep on living the good life.
You can visit at www.microstreamradio.com. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted by Microstream Radio. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, reproduced, copied, or used anywhere without the written permission of Microstream Radio. Preservation Oaks starring Sean Radcliff originates in Salt Lake City, Utah. Be sure to join us for our next episode on your favorite podcast platform. This is Thaddeus Dillon speaking. Preservation Oaks has come to you through the worldwide podcast platform Podbean, and our home is preservationoaks.podbean.com. Hopefully you found today's episode useful, informative, and thought-provoking. If so, please like, follow, comment, and/or subscribe. Remember that being free means being free to be curious, and that historical and genealogical societies and museums allow us to discover the past, be free to explore, where curiosity opens every door. Thanks to everyone for listening. Stay cozy, curious, and keep exploring the incredible stories that shape our world. Remember to cherish and support the preservation of history in your own communities. The content of this program is provided for educational and informational purposes only. Some material included in this program may be copyrighted by third parties. However, under Section 107 of the U.S. Copyright Act, the doctrine of fair use allows the limited use of copyrighted material without requiring permission from the rights holders when used for purposes such as education, criticism, commentary, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. These uses are legally permitted even if they might otherwise constitute infringement. If you wish to use copyrighted material from this program for purposes beyond fair use, you must obtain permission from the copyright owner. If you believe your copyrighted material has been used in this program in a way that does not qualify as fair use, please contact us at Preservation Oaks at gmail.com.